killed sitting in her patrol car is set for this afternoon. Her funeral is tomorrow. Remember when James Comey testified the material he leaked to a friend was not classified?
Yeah, my view was that the content of those unclassified, the memorialization of those conversations was my recollection recorded.
Well, it turns out he actually may have broken the rules. A brand new bombshell report accuses Comey of putting our national security at risk. According to The Hill, the former FBI director's personal memos detailing private conversations with President Trump contained top secret information. And if that's the case, and this is a report, I have to ask, what do you guys think about that?
It's a big deal.
Yeah.
It is. If it's true, Comey broke the same security protocol that he criticized Hillary Clinton for at the conclusion of the campaign.
Yep.
Whoa! Blockbuster. We're going to talk to Jason Chaffetz about that. He was tweeting on it last night. We'll talk to him this morning.
Who's had many conversations with Comey, both on the record and off the record through private phone calls. Meanwhile, we've already know how critics feel about President Trump's tweeting.
The goal for all of us is to think about how can we reach people with this critical message that there is a real threat to journalism being waged here.
But this morning we have the examples of how the president's rewritten the fake narrative 140 characters at a time. We'll be right back.
The president has probably tweeted 100 times that CNN is fake, the New York Times is failing, the Washington Post makes up things. None of that is true. The goal for all of us is to think about how can we reach people with this critical message that there is a real threat to journalism being waged here.
A threat to journalism being waged there. Are the president's tweet a threat to journalism or simply a way for him to get around the fake news, as he's characterized it, which he feels is being reported? Here to analyze is the founder of Bold, Carrie Sheffield. Good morning to you.
Hey, good morning. Good to be here.
Okay, Bold Global, I should point out. So what do you think about how the president, clearly he's a consumer of television and media, and if he's at home and he sees somebody saying something that he does not think is right, he's going to start tweeting and correcting the record.
Exactly. He is exercising his First Amendment rights, which is what every president should do. The difference now is that he has a vast social media empire to go around the mainstream media that is neglecting their duty to represent the public, to be in the public interest. And so this, conspiracy theory coming from the mainstream media, they don't like feeling like they're not needed. But the reality is they have failed in their job. They have failed to represent half of the country. Like, I'm from the quote unquote flyover states.
Me too.
And the mainstream media does not represent where I'm from, and they don't realize it.
Well, for instance, when it comes to Russia and collusion, so the mainstream media is talking about that. Then Trump tweets out, James Clapper and others stated that there is no evidence President of the United States colluded with Russia. This story is fake news, and everyone knows it, just like that. And here is Mr. Clapper. Watch this.
I saw no direct evidence of political collusion between the campaign and the Trump campaign and the Russians.
While the mainstream media is saying there's collusion, the president tweets out there is no collusion. And remember, James Clapper said the same thing. Boom, boom, boom.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, they've got an agenda. They have a preconceived notion of what the story should be rather than reality. That's why the president calls them fake news. It's the same thing with health care. All the mainstream media said, there's no way the House is going to pass the health care bill. And President Trump says they're going to pass one. And guess what happened? They passed one. Same thing with the travel ban. President Trump said, you know what? There is legal precedence. There is legal ground for what I am doing. Mainstream media says no. Guess what happens? Supreme Court allows the travel ban to go into effect.
I think it was last week President Trump referred to himself as like the modern kind of president when it comes to technology and stuff like that. Because when you think about it, if a White House historically has gotten a message they need to correct, they say, hey, Ari Fleischer or Dana Perino or whoever the press secretary is, go out there and fix it. But instead, he just does it himself. He can just do that. And that is the magic of Twitter.
Yes, he's much more efficient. I respect that. He cuts out the middleman. And you know what? In some ways, he's not that modern. I actually think in some ways he's very much like Winston Churchill.
Really?
Winston Churchill came from a very wealthy family. Winston Churchill did not have a perfect life. He colored outside the lines in a lot of ways. He had a very salty tongue. It took me a while to get used to President Trump's salty tongue. And Winston Churchill gave all kinds of insults. They're legendary. I think we should have a side-by-side of Winston Churchill's insults and Donald Trump's tweets. We'd see a lot of similarities.
Interesting stuff. All right. Carrie, thank you very much for your point of view on this Monday morning.
Thanks. Great to be here.
What do you think about that? Email us. Meanwhile, next up on the rundown, Democrats likening a dictatorship after this photo of Ivanka Trump taking her father's chair at the G20. Is that fair? We're going to debate it next. Then, proof you can't knock down faith. The support pouring in this morning for this damaged 10 Commandments monument.
All right, we're back with some headlines now and some big news. A Fox News alert. You have a major victory for Iraqi forces, backed by our guys. Their troops were pouring into the streets of Mosul, celebrating the city's liberation from ISIS. You know that JV team? Iraq's troops now control almost all of Mosul after 9 months of heavy fighting, but there are still some pockets of resistance. That'll be a problem. Next, a popular tourist spot in London turning into a fireball overnight. Here's a look at the raging fire near Camden Stables. 70 firefighters trying to put it out. It is now under control. Man, what is going on in London? Fortunately, no one was hurt. Ainsley, let's talk politics.
Okay, good deal. Thank you so much, Brian. The mainstream media is taking aim at Ivanka Trump over her seat at the G20 table.
Ivanka Trump, she briefly took a role, on a critical role, we should say, at the G20 summit.
The president's daughter, Ivanka Trump, sat in on meetings at the G20. What's her role?
We should point out senior administration officials are downplaying that this was any sort of, big deal. It's a reminder that, when President Trump is abroad or even when he's dealing with policies on the domestic front, it is a family business at times. This is the deal when you're talking about the Trump White House.
Are Democrats reigniting the war on women? Here to debate this, Democratic strategist Christy Setzer and Washington Times columnist Madison Gesiato. Thank you both for being with us. Well, Christy, I'll start with you. As the Democrat that we're talking to this morning, they're acting like she is a kid. I mean, she's a White House advisor to the President of the United States. She has a successful business. She went to Wharton Business School. She's a senior advisor to her father. What is so wrong? Why is the left so upset about her sitting in for her dad in this meeting briefly?
Well, she's an unpaid advisor. Let's be clear about that.
Because she doesn't want to take money from the government.
Right. But the point is that, look, this isn't really about Ivanka per se. This is about the fact that we have someone who has been confirmed by the Senate to take the president's place on the world stage when he can't. The guy's name is Rex Tillerson. He's the Secretary of State. And the reason why people are sort of freaking out about the fact that Ivanka took the president's place as opposed to Rex Tillerson or someone, say that who's in our cabinet or, a U.S. senator, someone like that who's actually been elected, is because this sends a very strong signal to the world about who actually has power in our government, who is actually trusted. The fact that it is the president's daughter, as opposed to, again, someone else with more official power, is disconcerting to a lot of people. Because, again, this is not a monarchy. This is not a dictatorship. We live in a democracy where the president's family does not automatically have power conferred upon them just because the president does.
All right, Madison, I want to get your reaction to some of the tweets that folks in the media were tweeting that were really upset about it. New York Times, Charles Blow tweeted, "Why the heck is Ivanka Trump sitting in for daddy at G20 meetings? What are her qualifications? Who voted for her?" Also, Elizabeth Spires-Gawker, she says the G20 is not take your daughter to work day. And then Amy Siskin, who's a women's rights activist, she says this kind of thing happens all the time in dictatorships. Do you think if a man like a Rex Tillerson had sat in that chair instead of Ivanka, instead of a female, would they be upset about it?
Oh, absolutely not. And I'd like to take it a step further and say that if another woman was sitting at that same table, say Chelsea Clinton, I think they'd be touting her as a future presidential candidate and a figure of female empowerment. And let me go back to what Christy was saying before, because I'm not really sure where to start breaking apart the logical flaws in her argument. To say someone is qualified because they are an elected official is absolutely ridiculous. There's a lot of elected officials that wouldn't be qualified to be sitting at that table at the G20. And to take away from Ivanka's incredible accomplishments and the fact that she is qualified to be sitting at that table, I think is disrespectful to her. If she were any other woman or if she were a man, we would not be having the same conversation. Going back to what you said earlier, Ainsley, look at everything she's done. She graduated from the Wharton School of Business. She's a special assistant to the president. She's an advisor to the president. On top of that, she was an executive vice president of the Trump Organization. She's a female entrepreneur. And let's not forget that she was also there speaking on a World Bank panel on female entrepreneurship. And at this panel, she brought so much attention to the fact that there's not yet been a fund created that would allow female entrepreneurs access to not only capital, but with also a dual focus and having access to mentorship and networks, which I think is extremely important for female entrepreneurs all over the world when we're facing a $300 billion deficit, compared to men when it comes to investing.
All right, Christy, I want to get your reaction to this because Angela Merkel, she said the delegations themselves decide should the president not be present for a meeting, who will then take over and sit in the chair. Ivanka Trump was part and parcel of the American delegation, so that's something that other delegations also do. It's very well known that she works at the White House and is also engaged in certain initiatives. So you have Angela Merkel, who disagrees with her dad on climate change, and she's coming out defending Ivanka.
Right. I mean, to the extent that she's part of the American delegation, then you are right. Then absolutely she should be allowed to take that place for, a couple minutes, especially as we're talking about he stepped out for one-on-one meetings. That is really not the issue. The issue, again, is that she is a member of the president's family. That is why people are concerned. It's sort of this blurring of their business interests with their personal interests, with the U.S. interest. Well, she's not qualified.
Why don't you think she's
even
qualified?
Again, if she were, look, let's take this
what's
back
your problem
to
with her? Why isn't she qualified?
Yeah, we've missed any point.
Do you remember 25 years ago? Do you remember 25 years ago when Hillary Clinton took over a health care commission and Republicans lost their mind because she wasn't the one who elected? Or even, let's say, a couple years ago when Michelle Obama wanted to call attention to the epidemic of childhood obesity in America. And again, Republicans lost their minds because we didn't elect her.
Neither Michelle Obama nor Hillary Clinton at the time had roles of special advisor or assistant to the president. They were the first lady of the United States, and that's a very different role.
Well, they actually had offices within the White House. So,
it doesn't matter. They weren't there as a part of the delegation trying to sit in at the G20. This is a completely different situation.
All right, so maybe both sides need to support each other and not make things like this the headline. Thank you so much, Christy and Madison, for being with us. Have a good day.
Good to be here.
Thank you. All right, who better to ask advice on negotiating with Russia than former members of the Obama administration? This morning, former CIA Director John Brennan telling President Trump how to do his job. Will the president listen? That story is next. And it is the tarmac moment going viral. The president saving Marine's hat from getting blown away by the wind. That's your shot of the morning, the video that everybody's talking about this morning. President Trump lending a helping hand to a Marine, rescuing his hat after it blows off his head when boarding Marine One.
The president put it back on his head, but big winds down there in Maryland took it off again.
This is why I don't bring my chopper to work. President Trump doesn't give up. He persists, chasing it again and again before boarding the Marine, boarding and handing the hat over to another Marine to give it to that Marine when the chopper leaves.
And the Marine never flinched.
So
Awesome.
one thing is pretty clear about the intelligence agencies, or by the heads of the intelligence agencies with their Obama administration. Neither James Clapper nor John Brennan like President Trump at all. And they'll take any opportunity to hop back on television and speculate on what President Trump should be doing. For example, maybe that President Trump should have been a little bit tougher with Vladimir Putin.
Yeah,
that was the speculation yesterday.
Former CIA Director John Brennan, he served under President Obama. He said that our president was too soft when he was talking to Vladimir Putin. Listen.
It shows that I don't think he demonstrates good negotiating skills when it comes to Mr. Putin. Again, 2 days before in Warsaw, he gives Mr. Putin the opportunity to point to the failures of U.S. intelligence. To me, I think he ceded that ground. And also, right before he met with Mr. Putin and talked with him at some length, which I'm glad he did, he said it's an honor to meet President Putin. An honor to meet the individual who carried out the assault against our election. To me, it was a dishonorable thing to say.
You know, before the Putin meeting with the president, so many people were saying, oh, he's never going to bring up meddling. The president brought it up first, apparently went back to it 2 or 3 times, according to some of the news reports out there. It looks like some of the political left, and I would categorize him as somebody from the political left originally in the intel community, just won't give this president any credit for anything.
As the president, you're supposed to meet with your adversaries. You're supposed to meet with all sides, every leader of every country, if you can, and negotiate with them, right? We need Vladimir Putin to help us with North Korea to prevent a nuclear attack on Alaska or, God forbid, any other parts of the U.S. Yeah. We also need him to help with Syria.
Sure. All right. A couple of things. When you meet with him, saying, I knew the second the president said it's an honor to meet you, you know it's a problem. Number one, when it comes to protocol, this president's just getting used to this. Plus, when you say it's an honor to meet you, you're also saying that to the Russian people. You don't just if you diss the leader of a country, despite the questionable background of Vladimir Putin and of being generous, you're also disrespecting all the Russian people. So he's saying, listen, you're head of a major country, honor to meet you. They sit there for 2.5 hours. Melania walks in and says, guys, you got to break this off. We're falling way behind. They continue to meet for another 45 minutes because, as everybody knows, from Leonid Brezhnev to Richard Nixon, you have to meet with the Russian leader, the Soviet leader, because of the power they represent and what they bring to the table. In the big picture, don't look at what took place and say to yourself, I would have done it different. Look at what's happened. Natural gas is now going into Eastern European nations. Let's look at in the Ukraine. Do you know what the Secretary of State said yesterday? No sanctions are going to be relieved unless the Ukrainian borders are reestablished. And he also has the loyalty of the Ukrainian leader, who was just lavishing praise over President Trump and what he's done since he's taken office. Also, think about what President Trump has done in Syria. He has bolstered up our forces. He's taken out a Syrian plane. 56 Tomahawk missiles are there. We go ahead and started arming the Kurds in Turkey. This is all against Russian interests. Look at what he's done. Don't get into the semantics. And John Brennan knows better.
Well, and John Brennan said this president doesn't have good negotiating skills. You're wondering, so did the last one have good negotiating skills? Because apparently Barack Obama knew that the Russians were trying to meddle with the election, didn't do anything until after the election. Is that good negotiating? We ask you.
Let us know what you think. Let's hand it over to Jillian, who has some more headlines for us. Hey, Jillian.
Good morning. Good Monday morning to you guys, to you at home as well. Let's begin out west right now because there are massive wildfires burning up the west. A state of emergency now declared in Butte County, California. More than 4,000 people forced to leave their homes as the wildfire takes a rapid turn, torching homes. Crews also fighting out-of-control brush fires in Santa Barbara County. The Whittier fire forcing thousands of people to leave campgrounds. Among them, 90 children temporarily trapped by the flames. Now, these are just two of the dozens of wildfires raging in at least 9 states. Today, commuters across the Northeast are bracing for a nightmare commute that will last all summer long. A massive 2-month repair project at the nation's busiest rail hub starts today.
It's going to be rough.
It's going to be ridiculous.
If you reduce trains coming into Penn by 20%, it will be a summer of hell.
Whew, strong words. Emergency Amtrak repairs closing a number of tracks at New York City's Penn Station, forcing 650,000 commuters to find alternative ways in and out of Manhattan. The $40 million project is expected to be finished by September. And proof you can't knock down faith. Private donations pouring in to help replace a Ten Commandments monument that was destroyed 24 hours after it was installed. Overnight donations jumping up to $55,000 for the statue on the Arkansas State Capitol grounds. The 6-foot granite tablets came toppling down after police say a man drove his car into it. He's now in jail facing several charges. Look at your headlines. I'll send it back to you guys and see you in a little bit.
Isn't one of the rules thou shalt not knock over a monument?
Right. I think that's 11. That's 11.
Thank you, Jillian.
I think Mel Brooks said there were 20.
15.
There were 15, and he dropped 5. Or he dropped 10.
Maybe it was 20.
Yeah, okay, we'll find out. Hey, by the way,
commandments.
My wife organized this great Sweet 16 for my daughter, all outdoors. So I had called Janice Dean to see if we should still have the party outdoors. She was in Canada, but still correctly forecasted it and green lighted the party.
How did you do that?
You know, magic.
How was your trip? We missed you.
I am so glad that it worked out for you, Brian. But just, I was on vacation. I am still at work, though, for Brian Kilmeade.
Never
always.
Stop. Thank you.
You are so welcome. Let's take a look at the maps real quick. We have cooler temperatures across the East Coast. Beautiful day across the Northeast, but we've got a system that's going to move in tomorrow, bringing the chance for showers and thunderstorms. So if you have a beach event, you might want to bring that one indoors. Large hail, damaging winds, isolated tornadoes for the northern plains and the Great Lakes, as well as a little bit of moisture for the west. So there's your severe threat through this evening. Large hail, damaging winds. I don't think we're going to see tornadoes, but just be aware if you live in those regions. All right, back inside. Nice to be back.
I keep an eye on this guy. All right, JD, thank you very much.
You got it.
All right, still ahead on this Monday, a meltdown over snowflakes.
I'm a snowflake, and so are you. Your children are snowflakes, and so are mine.
Seriously, we have a snowflake reality check coming up.
And while New York City mourns an officer, Mayor Bill de Blasio rallies the resistance in Germany. Former Boston Police Commissioner Ed Davis is furious. He is next.